your attention, for example, is mediated by unconscious forces. And you know that perfectly well. And this is another Freudian observation. If you're sitting down to study, for example, your conscious intent is to study. But you know perfectly well that all sorts of distraction fantasies are going to enter the theater of your imagination non-stop and annoyingly. And there isn't really a lot you can do about that except maybe wait it out. So you'll be sitting there reading and your attention will flicker away. You'll think about, I don't know, maybe you want to watch Jane the Virgin on Netflix or something like that. Or maybe it's time to have a peanut butter sandwich. Or you should get the dust bunnies out from underneath the bed. Or it's time to go outside and have a cigarette. Or maybe it's time for a cup of coffee. Or it's like all these subsystems in you that would like something aren't very happy just to sit there while you read this thing that you're actually bored by. And so they pop up and try to take control of your perceptions and your actions non-stop. Maybe you think, well, this is a stupid course anyways. Why do I have to read this damn paper? And what am I doing in university? And what's the point of life? It's like you can really get going if you're trying to avoid doing your homework. And then you might think, well, what is it in you that's trying to avoid? Because after all, you took the damn course and you told yourself to sit down. Why don't you listen? Well, because you're a mess. That's basically why. You haven't got control over yourself at all. And no more than I have control over this laptop. Okay, so there's the memory function of the unconscious, and there's the dissolutive function. That's an interesting one. The unconscious contains habits, once voluntary, now automatized, and dissociated elements of the personality, which may lead a parasitic existence. That's an interesting one. I would relate that more to procedural memory. So what you've done is practice certain habits, whatever they might be. Let's call them bad habits. And you'd like those things to get under control, but you can't. So maybe when you're speaking, for example, you use like and and you say a lot. And you've practiced that, so you're really good at it. And you'd like to stop it, but you don't get to because you've built that little machine right into your being, right? It's neurologically wired. And it's not under conscious control. And anything you practice becomes that. It becomes part of you, and that's another element of the unconscious, a different part. And then there's a creative part, which is that, well, you're sitting around and maybe you're trying to write something, or maybe you want to produce a piece of art or a piece of music, or maybe you're just laying in bed dreaming and you have all these weird ideas, and especially in dreams, it's like, where do those things come from? And even more strange, one of the things that's really weird about dreams, and almost impossibly weird, is that you're an observer in the dream. It's like a dream is something that happens to you. Well, you're dreaming it, theoretically, so how is it that you can be an observer? It's almost like you're watching a video game or a movie, but you're producing it, at least in principle, although the psychoanalysts would say, well, no, not exactly. Your ego isn't producing it, your unconscious is producing it. It's a different thing. It's, in some sense, it isn't you exactly, or it isn't the you that you think of when you think of you. And that's the ego from the Freudian perspective, the you that you identify with. That's the ego. And outside of that is the unconscious. The id, that's more the place of impulses. And you could think about those as the biological subsystems that can derail your thinking, right? And that govern things like hunger and sex and aggression and your basic instincts is another way of putting it. And it's a reasonable way of thinking about it because these are subsystems that you share with animals. You share them certainly with mammals. You share most of them with reptiles. You share a lot of them with amphibians, and even going all the way down to crustaceans. There's commonality, for example, in the dominance hierarchy circuits. And so these are very, very old things. And the idea that you're in control of them is, well, you're not exactly in control of them. And I would say the less integrated you are, the less you're in control of them, and the more they're in control of you. And that can get really out of hand, but it's as if there are these autonomous semi-spirits inside of them that grip control over their behavior and make them do things. And you find that to some degree in your own life, because maybe you've become very attracted to someone, even maybe you don't want to be attracted to the person, and then you find yourself, texting them when you know perfectly well that you should be going to bed, and you're in a grip of something, and you can't control it, and that's all part of the unconscious and all part of what Freud was studying.
안녕하세요, 수신입니다. 여러분, 무언가 하려고 자리에 앉으면 얼마안가 집중력이 흐트러지고 나도 모르게 다른 생각을 하고 있진 않으신가요? 오늘은 집중해서 목표한 걸 다 마칠 거야 라고 생각하지만 어느새 온갖 잡다한 생각이 머릿속에 떠오르고 집중력이 흐트러집니다. 괜히 책상 정리도 해보고 점심은 뭘 먹을지도 생각을 해봤다가 어느새 핸드폰을 잡고 쇼츠를 보고 있는 나를 발견하죠. 그리고는 이내 내 목표 자체를 부정하고 그만둘 구실을 찾습니다. 내 안에 또 다른 나, 무의식은 우리의 의지와 다르게 우리를 장악하고 본능이 원하는 방향으로 우리를 통제하려고 듭니다. 나는 분명 열심히 공부가 하고 싶다고 마음을 먹었지만 내면의 나는 이 지루함을 못 견디고 자꾸 공부를 피하려고 하죠. 제가 유튜브 이름을 수신으로 지은 이유도 내 몸과 마음, 바로 무의식을 온전하게 통제하겠다는 의지였습니다. 무의식, 본능적인 나는 너무나도 게으르고 쾌락적이고 충동적입니다. 목표를 향해 나아가다 보면 내 의지와 다르게 그 목표와 자신을 의심하게 되죠. 유튜브 이거 몇 명 보지도 않는데 계속 하는 게 맞나? 블로그 글 매일 쓴다고 뭐가 될까? 이거 계속 한다고 사람들이 날 알아주기나 할까? 이런 의도하지 않은 생각들이 들기 시작하고 모든 걸 놔버리고 싶어집니다. 다시 예전으로 돌아가서 생각 없이 하루하루 뒹굴거리며 살고 싶은 마음이 계속 커지죠. 순식간에 나를 무기력하게 만들고 의욕은 사라져버립니다. 생각이 깊어지면 깊어질수록 무의식이 나를 잠식하는 힘은 강해지는 경향이 있습니다. 의욕은 바닥을 치고 자신감은 떨어질 때면 차라리 더 이상 생각하길 그만두는 게 좋습니다. 저는 그럴 때면 닥쳐 그냥 하는 거야 라고 속으로 말하고 무의식의 나를 떨쳐버립니다. 그리고 해야 할 일에만 다시 집중하는 거죠. 저는 지금 유튜브 영상을 찍기 전에도 이거 어차피 잘 안 될 것 같은데 포기해버릴까? 라고 자기 합리화를 하려고 했었어요. 무의식 중에 나도 모르게 부정적인 생각들이 쏟아졌고 저는 저에게 닥치라고 한마디 한 뒤에 촬영을 시작했습니다. 목표를 향해 나아갈 때 나를 방해하는 건 조건이나 환경, 내가 가진 능력 이런 것들이 아니었어요. 언제나 나를 방해하는 건 나 자신이었습니다. 너무 걱정이 많고 무기력하고 게으른 내면에 뿌리 깊게 자리 잡은 내 잠재의식, 바로 나 자신이었죠. 조던피터슨의 말처럼 무의식을 통제하기란 쉽지 않습니다. 하지만 무의식이 나를 통제하려 든다는 걸 인식하는 것만으로도 무의식에서 깨어날 수 있습니다. 우리 내면에 숨어있는 그 부정적인 놈은 무시하세요. 자꾸만 나에게 말을 건다면 닥치라고 한마디 하고 계속 나아가면 그만입니다. 지금까지 수신이었습니다.